Well, hi, this is Dr. Randy Shepard again, and I'm excited that was able to come to video number 1. And we're going to talk about what I think is the number 1 overlooked tax deduction that's readily available to all self-employed business people, but they overlook the tremendous deduction that it's offered to you. And that is auto mileage. Auto mileage. I remember, and I've got a whiteboard behind me to kind of share with you some numbers, but I remember when I first started off, that it asks you on Schedule C, do you have evidence of your auto mileage? And is it written evidence? And some of you have done a good job and have taken have written it down, and that's great. I'm going to introduce a little bit later what I think is a really good tracker, auto mileage tracker and expense tracker that I would recommend to you for just pennies on the dollar. I mean, it's a way to keep, it's the only IRS compliant software or app that you can add to your phone that's GPS directed that I think is fantastic. And it's not MileIQ. MileIQ's got some flaws, and maybe we'll save it for another reason why I think this one is better than the other. But you know, the IRS agreed to give you some 54 cents a mile, 54 and a half cents actually in 2017, which is when this is being aired. 54 and a half cents a mile for any business mileage that is ordinary and necessary to your business. Now get this, the Internal Revenue Service is going to allow you to have $1 for every 2 miles that you drive. $1 for every 2 miles that you drive. I'd almost try to find the longest way around, if that's the case. But actually the IRS gives you specific, and you'll be able to have the publication to be able to download if you'd like. It's on my website. You'll be able to, right below this video, you'll be able to download it. But the publications that are given out by the Internal Revenue Service are very specific. And they're going to give you 54 and a half cents a mile for everything that is ordinary and necessary to your business. Now, I work out of my home, and I take the in-home office business deduction. Now, why do I do that? Because wherever you spend more than 50%, 51% or more of your business doing business transactions, meeting with customers, what have you, administration, that becomes your office, okay? Well, I do all of that out of my home. 51% at least is done out of my home. So everything from my home and where I go then becomes if it's ordinary or necessary for my business, I track it on my software. Now, I use a software by my dear friend Sandy Botkin, who was one of 9 CPAs that taught all IRS agents in Washington one day how to audit. He is the founder of the Tax Reduction Institute, had the privilege of working with Sandy Botkin for the Tax Reduction Institute, and did seminars all over the place on how self-employed business people could save thousands of dollars on their taxes by just keeping more of what they work hard to earn. But one of the biggest one is auto mileage. You see, what happens is without having a GPS tracker, a lot of times what do? We guess. Now, this is what happened to me, and I'm going to turn to the board for this to give you an example. What I did is one year I had some things written down, but it wasn't real organized. And you need to be organized. In fact, for every business mile, when you go, you need to be able to be specific. They want to know where you're going, for what purpose, what specific purpose are you going there for, who you met with, and what did you discuss. And then they want to know the mileage. So you can write it down in a log. I like a little software called TaxBot at taxbot.com. And one of the reasons why I like it over MileIQ is because you can give a specific purpose, and also it tracks any meals, and it can upload to a ledger. It can justify with your bank account. There's a lot of things TaxBot can do. I think MileIQ is $5.99 a month, and TaxBot is $9.99 a month. So for $4 extra, I get so much more out of TaxBot.com's TaxBot app on my phone. It's GPS related. And so at the end of the day, I take about 60 seconds to say, I swipe right if it's business, or if it's personal, I swipe left. And it's real easy. If I swipe right and pause, it turns around and says, what specific purpose did you go for? And I can name the person, what we talked about, what it was for, And again, I do this every single day and reconcile for 60 seconds. That's all it takes me to reconcile and be IRS compliant. It actually even gives me a map of where I went, the actual addresses from where I started to where I went. I can explain that if it's a return trip or it's a stop along the way. And if I have a meal with a client, and I can also take a picture of that receipt. You don't have to keep any receipts that are under $75. We'll talk about that in another tax reduction tip. But here's what happened to me, and I'll turn to the board. When I began to just guess about my auto mileage, I would guess, and my deduction ended up being, this was on Schedule C, about $678 one year. That was without using, this was $6,780. I think you can see it. That was my write-off on Schedule C, my write-off out of my business. Now, you have to use a third-party administrator to authenticate your mileage. A third-party administrator would be like Jiffy Lube, or in my case, Douglas Tire, where I live. And I get an oil change every single January. Now, I get oil changes throughout the year, but every January I make sure that they do an oil change and rotate my tires. And what do they do up in that slip? That slip they give you, on the top they have the odometer reading, or somewhere on that page they have the odometer reading. From January to January, I have third-party authentication that I drove X number of miles for the entire year, okay? So now I'm able to share about what I drove for the entire year. Well, the first time, I used to just kind of guess. I'd write them down, but I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't detailed about all my miles. And I forgot so many trips, and so I was very conservative about it. So actually I looked at my tax return, and I had a 6,000. Remember, this is what the government gives me back. At this time, they were paying 57.5 cents a mile. They're going down. The 2017 is 54.5. So anyways, it was $6,780. But here's what I did. When you went with TaxBot or some type of software that has a GPS tracking device, and you can take about a minute or two to reconcile at the end of the day. I'm just usually laying in bed, charging my phone, and I'm doing it while I'm watching the news. And it then turned around, and I realized I was actually driving, and I knew this, I was driving more miles than I was actually giving myself credit for. But because I really didn't have a good written system, I just guessed, and I only got a $6,780 reimbursement from the federal government on my Schedule C. That's what went in the blank for auto mileage on my Schedule C. When I was actually being more accurate, and then I had third-party identification, and I had specific purposes via TaxBot, it actually came to $12,777. Isn't that amazing? That is a that's a $6,000 difference. I added $6,000 in additional expenses. Would that be huge? Well, if you took that times 25%, what would that be? That'd be a lot of money. That's probably about $1,200. What? Back in my pocket? Really? Honestly? If you take federal and state, your effective tax yield, it's probably a little over $1,200. That's going to be back in my pocket. So me paying $9.99 a month to a software like Tax, and this is not a promo for TaxBot, I promise you. This is not a promo for TaxBot. But I like the software that has that because it allowed for me to be IRS compliant. I can prove it was written, evidentiary, backed by Douglas Tire, my third-party administrator, and I was able to put $6,000 in additional write-offs, which actually gave me over $1,200 just on this one tax idea, just on this one thing, an actual $1,200 refund back in my pocket. We're going to keep going. We got more stuff to tell you, so watch the next video.